You're listening to the Muddling Through podcast. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's been a minute. How you been?
Good. Very, very busy. Obviously, as we try to schedule this to like 2 weeks just to find a day.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. You know, back in high school, obviously we all had things to do, but it was one of those things where you could pretty reliably get together at least once a week and probably like 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when we started talking again. I was like, man, it was at least once a week. You're like, yeah, Gordon's going to come pick me up at like 10 and we're back at 1:30. Just consistently.
Yeah. No, it's high school. God, it seems like such a long time ago.
It was a very long time ago.
Something like 8 years since I graduated.
Dang, yeah. That sounds about right.
I mean, you've been on a track, right? Like you've kind of had things planned out for a bit. Has it gone according to plan?
No. A lot of different things that I tried, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working pretty consistently, but I kind of jumped around. Almost graduated with associates in criminal justice, and then I was testing at a PD. That didn't work out, and they gave me the pay sheet. They're like, yeah, for an associate, you're gonna get like another $500 a year. Like, a class is $1,000. Thanks, dude. This isn't even worth it.
Yeah, no. How long would it take you? Yeah, no.
That's 60 classes, so it was ridiculous.
Dang.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna hold off on that. Now I'm considering getting a business degree, but then I'd basically just be in school forever.
Yeah,
because I did that for so long, and now I'm getting my personal trainer cert, so I'm back to online school. And then if I try to get my degree, it'd probably be a bachelor's, so it'd be, back in it again.
Yeah, no, that's doesn't really. We talked on the podcast a little bit about, you know, what a racket, further education ends up being a lot of the time.
Right.
And even for you, you've done it fairly affordably, it seems like it's not really paying off, and you've kind of had to do it in like sort of drawn out, right?
Yeah. Didn't have to, just for me, I did.
Yeah. I don't know. It's been interesting. I always figured, you've always sort of picked like a thing you wanted to do and then just like really went for it. I mean, that's something that I really admired about you, especially in terms of physical fitness. Like you've really kind of very disciplined, shall we say?
Thank you.
Is that something that you had to develop, or is that something that you always were like a single-minded kind of individual and just kind of got after it?
Fitness in particular kind of fluctuated.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, I tend to get really excited about something and like go head first into it.
Mm-hmm.
When at my first job, when I was still kind of developing my homeschool social skills, they used to say that I was like a shark. Like I would just put my head down and like didn't pay attention to anybody, and I was kind of antisocial.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't always great at everything with that. But then I just kind of dive head first into stuff. With fitness, I think like I get really amped about something, especially if I watch a movie or something, and I got really excited, and then it kind of fluctuate, or I'd be consistent for like a week, and then I get sick or something, and I just drop it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always been a passion of mine. I've always enjoyed it. The industry really interests me. That's why I wanted my personal trainer cert. So that's something that I can always use, even if I'm working anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always have to fall back to.
Right. Have you kind of dabbled in personal training?
Not real professionally, because I've always been kind of the guy that worked out. People would ask me to work with him and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
David, actually, I trained for a while. I charge him like $20 a month or whatever, and get it together a couple times a week.
Sure.
And do training. Learned a lot since then. I definitely do better now, having actually had some training in it.
Right.
But a little bit, yeah. And I like classes, and martial arts is always a passion of mine. And that was another thing that I managed to almost achieve was my black belt.
Mm-hmm.
I guess literally the rank below black belt.
Okay.
So
Which martial art were you doing?
Kempo karate.
Okay.
So my instructor had been doing it, 30 plus years when I started. So he had instructor level in 10 different styles, which was really cool for me because you kind of got to try different things. But because of that, he kept changing and adapting it. And so he'd have like a routine you have to learn. I'd learn it, and then he'd change it, and I'd have to learn a new one.
Mm.
And that happened a bunch. So that's why I just never was able to finish it.
That kind of slows down your progress in any individual.
Exactly. But if I have my personal trainer cert, then I can only say I'm a personal trainer, and I have a certification, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I could do that. But,
and that's something that you can leverage it basically anywhere you are, because regardless of what kind of jobs are available places, like almost like I guess in less affluent areas it's going to be tricky, but like anyone with money is going to want someone to motivate them to work out. So it's like if you get people that you can kind of make it work. Did you find that it's kind of like the way artists complain about their gigs, where people ask them to do things and then be like, it's for exposure or it's for experience?
Not yet professionally. Mm-hmm. From friends, kind of. Yeah. I mean, it's not the like wanting something for nothing. I mean, to an extent, I hate to put it that way because they're my friends and stuff, but
yeah,
it's, you have to balance ones that are worth your while, and a lot of it's going to be the experience. I needed the experience.
Right.
I'm not going to ever regret that I help people out or anything that stuff, but it's very different, especially after the actual learning in it, because they focus so much on people who are not good at working out,
mm-hmm.
which are the people who usually want to hire you to help them and design routines for them and stuff. So that's a very different experience for me because I wasn't interested in working out.
Mm-hmm.
So like what I'll set up for myself is completely different than what I should be setting up for other people.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult to like remember what you don't know, or like kind of dial back your level of proficiency to work with a novice, if you will.
But you know me, because I was able to kind of skip a couple of steps, I have found that if I go back and actually like go step by step the way that I should have, I'll be better now, kind of thing. Which is interesting. There's a lot of like stability, building that initial stability, as opposed to just jumping into heavier weight, say.
Yeah.
Copper, to try and give a good example.
So like filling in. So if you look at a muscle in terms of like the individual fibers, like you can build some of the bigger ones if you're just going like straight load, and then if you're building stability, it like fills in the gaps.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's kind of like there's some of that. A lot of it's going to be with a lot of stability stuff. You don't necessarily feel like the strain, but you feel sore like the next day, kind of thing, like delayed soreness. So what I would always do is I would base it off of how the exercise made me feel. So if I felt the strain, that was my focus. Mm-hmm. If I didn't, like with a lot of stability exercises, but those do strengthen your obviously stability, so you have more control.
Right.
So you're going to be able to do better things down the road. So that was really interesting for me to learn, and that'll be good for the future to teach other people.
Mm-hmm. And they do say that one of the major, like in terms of learning, one of the major touchstones of it is teaching someone else. Like in order to learn it, you have to observe someone else doing it, try it yourself, and then teach it to somebody else, and then that really cements it.
Yeah, I think I saw a quote that was something along the lines of like reading something is like, how did that go? I'm going to butcher this really badly.
That's fine.
I essentially accumulated to that you only truly understand something when you teach somebody else, or when you're able to teach somebody else.
Right. And like the mark of true intelligence is being able to communicate something in the simplest possible terms.
Yes.
Like unless you can't, if you can't communicate it simply, you don't understand it like properly.
I like that. There's actually my martial arts instructor posted something on Facebook today that was a teacher is a student who continues their learning by teaching other people.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting.
That's pretty cool.
But you've been working out too, right?
No, I've I have like a similar issue with attention span where I think I've bought like 3 different workout programs in the course of like a year and a half. I'm on one that's like simple enough where I can just, and I'm seeing some results enough that I think I'll stick with it. Like it's only a 90-day program, but it's not like really complicated, so I can pretty consistently do it. The issue I'm having is if I'm consistent on the day and like don't let my breaks take too long and like don't like mess around before I go to the gym, because I go before work, I have like a hard stop.
Gotcha.
And so if I'm not making good time in terms of like, if my breaks take too long, basically the workout takes too long and then I'm not able to finish it.
Gotcha.
And so that's, I've I've had to wake up earlier and earlier as I've gone on this program, but definitely seeing some results. Like it's one of those things where like it doesn't really translate in pictures, which is a little disappointing. But
that's fair.
But I think I've gained like 7 pounds, and
that's impressive. That's good.
Yeah. So like, I mean, that's over the course of I think 5 or 6 months.
It's pretty good still.
So nutrition is probably the hardest part for me.
Yeah, same.
It's just, and like with my job, I'm not like in a single place a lot of the time. So anything I eat is going to have to be something I can eat while driving, which is not ideal. And it involves a lot more prep. And then the other option is to just like have ridiculously large meals on either end of that, or like snack throughout the day.
Yeah, kind of intermittent fasting style.
Yeah, which I'm not. I don't know. The whole snacking throughout the day thing is like an additional level of planning, and
snacks are expensive.
They are.
If you try to bring like nuts or something, ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, like eating. I've noticed that, like I tried doing that where I would just get like a jar of peanuts, some almonds, and just like do those individually. But I found that it really messes with my digestive system.
Okay.
Like way too much. Like if I have like a cup of like a cup's worth of any sort of like nut. If I eat the entire thing in one go, it can really, like, that's way too much fiber. Like way too much fiber.
That makes sense.
Really, like that can really mess you up.
Yeah.
Have you developed any sort of nutritional shorthand that you really fall back on, I guess?
I wish. Right now, that's kind of what I'm working on. And my job, just the way that I end up working a lot, because I'm on the sales floor and just with staffing and everything, I end up skipping lunch all the time. And that's not great. But learning nutrition through the training has been very interesting because you kind of have like a total calorie intake per day kind of thing, and you want the majority of it to be fats, next up protein, and then you want some carbs, protein, and then fats. So I always thought that was interesting because bro science has always been like, get all the protein you can eat, like just have tons of this stuff. And it's like, no, because you can only absorb so much of it. So everything after that is just excess. It's not really benefiting you. I started using an app. I found that it was like I don't remember what it was. It was some free app. And it was basically, I didn't put my food and it would count the calories. And so I did that for like a week and a half to try and figure out what my quantity per day was supposed to be. And then I've tried to freehand it since then. And I ended up losing 4 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Like, this is stupid. This isn't helping me at all. I was kind of annoyed with that because I'm trying to build more mass. But, yeah, it's really tough with nutrition. And one of the things that I was talking about was like, they talk a lot, again, on the bro science thing, like if you, like we have faster metabolism with smaller guys naturally.
Yeah.
They say, oh, you need to eat right before going to sleep because you're not going to burn as many calories during the night or whatever. It's like, well, no, because your daily usage, say you need 3,000 calories a day. If you have all 3,000 at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a little different when you're working out, though, because you're going to be eating or you're going to be burning energy storage. So eating right before, right afterwards is going to benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're naturally skinnier, leaner guys. We don't have a whole lot of energy storage to like have it free
Go
to
off
burn.
of, yeah.
You're gonna start burning your muscle and stuff like that. So it's different. I don't know if there's a good system yet. I've been doing a lot of protein shakes to try to add, and with those, you really only want meal supplements
Mm-hmm.
and replacements to be if I can't get enough nutrients from my actual food.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I started eating something, and like I can't eat a lot of one thing. I don't know what it is. I just stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't have a bunch of eggs in the morning. I have to have egg and like something else.
Yeah,
it's weird, but I don't know. Eating's a tough one. You're working out's the most easy. It's really nutrition.
Yeah.
Like they always say it's nutrition when you're trying to lose weight. I never realized how big a deal it is when you're trying to gain weight too and put on mass. It's hard.
And you can't eat just anything either. Like
Right.
You really have to be watching, specifically what you're eating. Like it's not enough to just be like calorie in,
Yeah.
And it's really tricky when you have like any sort of unusual, like any sort of abnormalities in your whatchamacallit, like tolerances and such. Like you're gluten intolerant,
Right.
so that really limits some of your pasta, like which is a major source of carbs in a lot of cases. Like pasta and bread, it's like, all right, this is going to be an additional layer of challenge that I have to deal with. And if you're trying to like be healthy and like do like the really like the basic healthy thing, which is to cut out, artificial sugars, like that's surprisingly difficult to do. Like anything packaged essentially is like, all right, well, that kind of puts the kibosh on that one.
Right.
So I don't know. Nutrition's been really weird for me. And like the other thing that I have to, worry about, especially in terms of carb intake, is I find that if I have carbs, like if I'm not sleeping enough, it's a problem. But if I have like carbs first thing in the morning, like I get really tired. And because I drive for a living, essentially, more or less, because I drive for a living, that's not an option, so it becomes really tricky to like nail down. Right.
At least you're aware of it, honestly. That's the thing that's really hard to track too. It's keeping that awareness of how it's affecting you. That's really difficult. So the fact that you're aware of that's really good.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's gonna help you.
I mean, for the longest time, I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was getting consistent sleep, but it was only like 6 hours. And like I really need like 7.5 on a regular basis to stay at, to not fall asleep while driving.
Yeah.
And it's been really challenging, especially recently where I am getting up so early. Is like, all right, you have to go to bed at a certain time, which cuts down on your social life a bit.
Sure.
Because everybody wants to do things at like 6, 7 o'clock, maybe, and like later.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, it's 7:30, guys. I got to go to bed. But yeah, no, I've definitely, experienced the benefits of getting enough sleep. It's not something that I really worried about before. But like now I've been able to get up a lot easier. Like I only have to set one alarm and I'm just up and I'm ready to go. Is that something that was that a process that you had to go through?
Yes, it's a lot easier for me to sleep in than to consistently get up early. Like I can get up early for a week and become a habit, and then I'll have one day where I sleep in and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. But something that I've said before, actually, I remember this particularly when Victoria started getting into training. She was asking people questions about it. And she was talking about what do you do to motivate yourself. And I was like, you really can't rely on motivation because that's going to fade. That's an emotion.
Yeah.
You're going to have ebbs and flow with that.
Yep.
You have to have dedication and discipline was the word that I used. Because if you don't have discipline, you don't stick to a routine, you're not going to maintain it. If you go off of how I feel today, that's going to fluctuate. You can't rely on that.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
Like one of the recurring themes in this podcast so far is I talk about the podcasts I'm listening to. So the three that have come up are Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, and Jocko Willink.
Okay.
Jocko Willink, his major thing is like discipline, like unmitigated unmitigated daily discipline in all things.
Yeah.
And so like he is super into fitness, and he is very much, and like he gets all these questions about like, Jocko, how do you stay motivated? Like, how do you get up early and get in the gym like every day? And you're just like, it's not about motivation. Like, people keep asking me like, what's the trick? What's the magic thing that you need to do? It's like, you do it.
Yeah.
You don't let yourself off the hook.
Yeah.
And like when he has a day where he's like, I really don't feel like working out today, like I feel ill, like physically. He's like, okay, do the workout. If you still feel bad tomorrow, like then you can take a day off.
Okay.
But you really have to, push yourself in that regard.
Sure.
I feel like he's kind of a man after your own heart, in a way. So obviously you don't have a lot of time to be listening to podcasts, but if you chose one to listen to, that would be the one for you.
After yours, really.
Well, I mean, I'd hate for you to miss out, but I would say, yeah, even regarding our personal friendship, I would pick his over mine. But yeah, I don't know.
Cool. Yeah, I'm trying to look into that too.
He's like a former Navy SEAL,
Okay.
and he has this company called Echelon Front, which is like a consultant, consultant business for, well, an agency that consults for large corporations and such.
It's like a security agency for emergency response kind of thing. Oh, wait, what about it?
Yeah, don't worry.
It's Parcel, basically.
Yeah, we'll come back. Anyway, yeah, no, it's been interesting. Like the tricky part is like the really tricky part in terms of fitness for me, like aside from nutrition, is like any sort of endurance training.
Yeah. It's like you're talking about cardio.
Yeah.
Cardio sucks.
It does suck, and it's like I can't. Like there's so much. Like it takes so much to get me to do any sort of like elliptical, stair climbing, like running, like, and I really should.
My thing, yeah.
Like I've been thinking recently that, it would be nice to kind of go on a path of like, if you wanted to join the military, you're not going to, but if you wanted to, like, here's what you could do. Like, So running is one of those major things where you spend a lot of time in the military, like at least in boot camp, you spend a lot of time running and, metabolic conditioning and all that sort of thing. And so every once in a while it occurs to me, like, I should really like work on just being able to run for, I don't know, like a mile, 2 miles, like without stopping. Like that seems like an achievable goal, especially if you push yourself. But then I'm like, I don't really, like, I have this thing where I'm working out and it's like taking up a certain amount of time, and I don't want to set aside time later, like after work, to do it. And I don't want to like take away from, like, I don't want to skip a workout just to go running.
It takes a lot of time. I mean, 15 plus minutes out of your workout.
Yeah.
It'd be a while. And honestly, when after like 2 minutes, you just don't want to be there anymore. I got a little more into circuit training with trying to reduce breaks between exercises to kind of compensate for the cardio.
Like interval training, kind of?
Yeah. There's a couple of different variables because you get circuit training. So, like the stereotypical circuit training is like watch a boxing or whatever, and have the beeper go off every like 30 seconds and then you go to the next workout.
Yeah.
Or you can do high intensity interval, which is similar, but you'll do a lot of high rep, fast motion stuff. So not necessarily running, but you'll do like battle ropes, or you'll do, if you can do a high amount of push-ups, you'll do a high amount of push-ups and then immediately go into like jumping lunges or lunges or whatever.
Or like burpees, I guess, or part of
that would be another one. I like a lot of the exercises that are more functional and more whole body, not necessarily whole body, but large muscle groups. Like just bicep curls are kind of boring to me. I like there to be more integrated motions. And I think that's more functional too.
Right.
Because a lot of it for me is the functionality of life. And I think when you were saying, seeing the results isn't necessarily in like physical pictures and like the image and stuff, but in, I'm assuming, what you're capable of. You've noticed a difference in just weight or your daily life even.
Yeah.
For me, like being able to notice a difference in like picking up a gallon of milk or whatever, like this is lighter now. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it's it's a daily. I mean, that's kind of dumb. Like, this isn't really gonna help me in my life, but that's a noticeable achievement of I am improving type of thing.
Yeah, I think the there was a point, like when I was still, just messing around with different programs. Like, I'd first got my gym membership, and I was just, doing what, like, I'd seen videos of like certain exercises, and I was trying to target muscle groups and all that sort of thing. One thing I noticed was I was able to, like, there's a specific thing that I had to do at work where I lift something up to about shoulder height and carry it, and I found that was a lot easier. The other thing that I noticed was I helped my dad move a dresser a few months back, and like it's a big dresser, like it's 7 or 8 feet long, and I don't know, like 150 pounds maybe. I'm terrible at gauging weight. You know how it is, but like, you're carrying it down these stairs, and it was not really an issue. Like, I could lift it and move it and shift it and, just carry it down the stairs, and I wasn't really having any issue with it. And that was, that's a good feeling, and then, I hung out with Victoria the other day, and, we've both been on this sort of thing, and she's like, this is going to sound strange, but you feel stronger, so it's kind of cool.
Cool.
And it's interesting when you only have like so many friends that are doing this sort of thing. And it would be cool. I mean, obviously you have to be able to do it by yourself. Like, if you're relying on other people to motivate you to continue, like if you're using other people as like, oh, they're doing it, so I'll keep doing it. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. But it would be, you start seeing like, oh, you always want to give people advice. That's like one of my major issues, I think, is like being willing to give people advice and not necessarily being able to take it, or like taking my own advice sort of thing.
Yes.
But like, you start seeing these things where it's like, oh, you could do this thing, like you could change your diet. You could be lifting weights, and it would make a significant improvement in your life. But like, you can't put that on them. You kind of have to let people come to that on their own.
Yeah. There's different stages of, I forget what the terminology was. It was some academia term, but it's like the 6 stages of your fitness profile, between like the highest one would be consistently working out for like a year. Like, this is your lifestyle and that kind of thing. And like the very first one is, I'm thinking about working out. Like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And that's kind of the end of it. And that's really hard with people. Everybody wants to have an exercise. Like, everybody likes the idea of fitness. But the fact is that everybody has the same 24 hours, and you're going to need to choose what your priorities are. It's the same thing we were talking about with discipline. It's really easy to sit back and go, I could watch a Netflix show right now and go to bed. Or you're going to do something fitness related.
Right.
End of the day, that's really hard. But again, it's all the same amount of time. You need to choose what your priority is going to be and stick to it. It's really hard.
Like, you kind of have to build your schedule around it.
Yes.
And like, a lot of people build their schedule around work, and, I'm not really an exception to that. But like, you have a certain window that you have to spend at work, and then you build everything else. But like, you have to, if you're going to embark on a fitness journey, you have to prioritize it and like really do it. Like, you can't just half-ass it, or you're not going to get any results.
Exactly. And you're always going to priority around, like you said, generally between your work. Like, I just got hired at the YMCA because I'm getting my training cert. I'm going to try and get some experience there. But I'm working with them, scheduling around my other job, because my other job's a priority.
Right.
So you always have something you have to prioritize around. And if you don't have the free time, it's like budgeting. It's literally like budgeting your money, except you're budgeting your time.
Yeah.
Because I have priorities, I have these expenses or these savings, and then you have your extra. And that's really hard to do. I think it's really hard for millennials in particular to do. Discipline's different. I was doing a lot of research on kind of the current gym market, I guess. And one of the things was, they're like, I was just talking a lot about how millennials are killing different businesses and stuff. Which is interesting, because I kind of want to talk about that, because it's really interesting. But specifically with gym first, they were saying how the majority of gym goers are people middle-aged and elderly over millennials, but millennials spend more money on gyms because they are not into like open gyms as much, but they're really big into classes. So they'll do the CrossFit programs, they'll do classes specifically, and that's kind of that. One, it might be because they all went to college and the only way they're going to do stuff is classes.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I think it's like you were saying, you have other people to motivate you and kind of hold you accountable.
Almost. And you kind of get your sense of community from that as well, where it might be lacking in other aspects of your life.
Definitely. So I thought that was interesting.
Another thing that's really occurred to me about millennials is like, people keep making this point that they're killing everything, but the thing that really, something came to me at one point. I forget how it manifested itself, but the thing that occurs to me is that a lot of younger people are willing to pay for quality.
Yes.
So like you have like people keep coming up with the whole avocado toast thing as like millennial entitlement. But like the thing is, avocados are like really good for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a superfood essentially.
Really.
And so if millennials, like obviously a lot of people are under student debt and like they're not as frugal as they could be, like they're going out to eat, but they're going out to eat not at chain restaurants or fast food places, which is why some of those are, you know, going under. And that's kind of a complaint. It's like they're not willing to substitute for sub-quality food.
That's true.
They're all poor because they're not making enough money to support the lifestyle of quality, but they're not willing to accept like below average quality for really anything.
And that was basically what it was. There's another one that I was looking at that was basically kind of an investment type analysis, I guess. Like this industry is doing this, or what the reactions and everything. They're talking specifically the millennial effects on it, and how essentially what you said, that millennials are not willing to pay for certain things. And it's not because it's a lot of like this is an excessive luxury kind of thing. I remember there being something else that was like millennials are eating out a lot more than past generations, but it's because they're not traveling. Like they can't afford to do this other stuff.
Right.
So they're finding other luxuries, I guess.
Right.
And it's really interesting how I forget what some of the industries specifically were that were going out, but I want to say it was like soda or something like that. It's like it's because millennials are buying healthy food and because they're actually like processed stuff is not getting as much business as it used to.
Right.
Things like that, which I thought was really interesting.
And I think, you know, it's sort of seen as this horrible thing, like these things are going out of business. It's like, no, that's the market, you know, the market's speaking, like that's how it's supposed to work. If there's not people willing to buy it, like it should die. Like that's kind of the idea.
I mean, the value of something is determined by how much people are willing to spend on it.
Exactly.
And it's a progression of the market. And it's always going to change. What's big is always going to change. People didn't think computers were going to take off. I mean, things are going to progress and change. It's just interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But it's always coming from the kind of baby boomer perspective of, millennials are doing all of this. Like, no, they're actually working really hard and they're actually doing a lot of stuff really well.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that, you know, people kind of, like, I mean, I think there is a valid argument for millennial entitlement in certain aspects. And, you know, kind of emotional fragility. There's like, depending on the level, I think there's something to be said for that. One of the things that it kind of goes along with being willing to pay for quality is, you know, millennials aren't, or we keep using this term, and I hate generalizing this broadly, but it seems like younger people are willing to work like lower paying jobs because they like working there rather than grinding at a job they hate or are not enthused about. So like they feel like they need to do something either meaningful or enjoyable. And, you know, maybe that's a lack of emotional fortitude on their part, or like kind of a like lacking a perspective of like, okay, I can do this thing that I'm not really enthusiastic about and find meaning in other aspects of my life. Like, but they feel like they have to get meaning out of what they do for a living, perhaps.
Yeah, that was a really interesting thought. I think I forget who it was, but somebody said, the amount of effort you put into something as far as your career and your work goes doesn't necessarily matter, because I've seen people kill themselves at Burger King, like working hard. And I think that's definitely a good point. So I've been thinking about that millennials work super hard at really easy jobs.
Yeah.
Like retail. It's not really, it can be a career. It's not a trade. It's not the same thing as being able to be a plumber or an electrician. Anybody can potentially work retail. Some people are better at it.
Yeah.
You may have a future in it. But it's not necessarily a difficult job.
Yeah.
You can kill yourself working at McDonald's, working at Burger King super hard. It doesn't mean anything necessarily. I think that millennials are annoyed at other generations because they feel that they're working really hard, and they are, but they're putting a lot of effort into something that's very easy in comparison.
Yeah, and going back to the education thing, obviously, we have to take responsibility. I'm going to speak for millennials. Like, speaking for myself, we have to take responsibility for not doing our due diligence in terms of finding out, what the cost of certain things is going to be. Specifically, looking at education. If we did our research ahead of time, like, obviously when you're 16, 17, 18, you're kind of dumb. Like, that's just, it's kind of, there's no two ways about it. Yes. Like, you're not that bright compared to like an adult generally. There are exceptions, obviously, but like we have to be told things.
Yeah.
And if we're not told, hey, college is super expensive, depending on what field you pick, you're probably not going to get a job. Right. You may not have the aptitude for the job that like you get put on, and you could spend a lot of money finding that out. Right. Whereas if you get sort of this outside feedback of like, hey, you might not be cut out for engineering. You're probably not going to make a lot of money, with a philosophy degree. Yeah. There are a lot of English majors out there. The job market's probably going to be flooded. So even if you could get a job, you may not be able to pay your student loans. So like, I feel like there's been a lot of emphasis lost on trade work. Yes. And you can make a lot of money. Sure. And be a productive, like a super productive member of society if you're doing, like, if you are a plumber, if you are a carpenter, if you are an electrician. And sure, we have to take responsibility for not doing our research and finding out that, like, oh, these are perfectly viable options, and like, it doesn't take a whole lot of education in order to get an entry-level job in these sort of things, and then start an apprenticeship and move forward in that way. But like, it's not like we were told, Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that college has become too much of a standard, and it really shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. Like, if everyone has a college degree, is it really worth anything?
Exactly. Yeah, if everybody's super anything.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a little controversial, but like, feminist is a big thing with the pay gap and stuff. And I remember, I forget who it was some female politician. She's like, okay, with the highest paying jobs, engineers, doctors, lawyers, it's all guys. Mm-hmm. Females are baristas and dancers and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, don't get a
gender studies degree.
Gender study dance arts degree. Go for your chemical engineering degree and get a higher paying job. Mm-hmm. Of course, if all the jobs are these lower pay grades, there's going to be an average pay gap.
Yeah.
But it's not by qualifications; it's by what you're focusing on. Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to the generational thing. Like, if you're not willing to be bored, essentially, like doing work, like ideally, everyone does a job that they're excited to do. Sure. But we don't live in a world like that. Like, maybe we could. Maybe you can figure out what that is, and it's. I feel like it's almost easier to be an entrepreneur now than it ever has been before because of the internet.
Absolutely.
And so if you can figure out what you want to do, you can probably make a living doing it with, like, I think what is it called? There's like a term for, it's like on a case by case basis. I can't remember what the term is. It's like Uber and what's the Uber and Lyft and like the home rental
Airbnb.
Airbnb. So like shoot, I forget the term. It's gonna drive me crazy. Anyway, where you where like it's
you kind of have like your own.
Like you can basically sell goods and services.
Yes.
Like you can basically anything you can do, you can make money off of essentially, and you just have to figure out a way to do that. But like you could also, plug yourself into a trade. You could, if you have the aptitude, you could probably become some sort of engineer, and you could make. You could be pretty happy making like not even that much money. Like if you make 40, 50K, 70K, like if you make more, there have been studies that show that if you make more than $70,000 a year, it doesn't measurably increase your happiness. So like anything above being able to pay your bills, like, and going back to the pay gap thing, it's like there's a certain weird aspect of society where guys specifically are willing to let everything else fall to the wayside in order to do a job. Whereas like, and not workaholics. Right, exactly. Like, and not all guys, obviously, like, but the ones that are willing to do it are like the really hyper productive, like go, relationships, like basically everything outside of the job becomes secondary.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are too smart to do that. Like, no, I want a life, like entirely. And so I'm not willing to do what that guy's doing because he's killing himself for that job.
Sacrifice that,
Sure, he's making a lot more money than I am, but what kind of life is it if you're not able to enjoy it?
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thought too. I think that anything in life, you're going to find your balance. I think that budgeting is huge. Alexander the Great said, time is our most precious commodity because I can always get more wealth, more money, but time is limited.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to learn to budget what your priorities are. And that's really hard. But I think that you need to determine, almost marketing yourself, this is who I am, these are my priorities, and set yourself in that. I remember growing up, it was always easy to be like, someday I'm going to do this, or like, in the future, this is my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the perspective of, these are the things I'm going to eventually do to make me who I want to be, almost. Okay. But I don't think that should be a priority. It should be, I need to be who I am, where I am right now.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think of it as like, if you take, let's pick somebody, I don't know, King Arthur. You have an image of who King Arthur is, right? You have a heroic image. He is always acting a certain way. He does a certain thing. Let's take him out of the royal court, out of being a knight, and put him in a completely different situation. I don't know, Starbucks, whatever. It doesn't matter. Is he still King Arthur? Is he still going to act the same way? Is he still who he is in a completely different situation?
Mm-hmm.
He should be.
Yeah. Like if he's a well-formed version of himself, like if he's done the work to create himself and build himself as a person, like he should manifest himself the same in any situation, or more or less the same in any situation.
Exactly. And sometimes you have to compensate. If I don't have a gym membership, I may need to work out at home or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not using what it is that I have, I'm not living that lifestyle, and that next step isn't necessarily worth the investment.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's somebody I knew who was like, yeah, once I get a dog, I'm going to start jogging with them. Like, but you don't run now. Why do you think you're suddenly going to start running when you have a dog?
Mm-hmm.
I think, so I've been trying to think about that when I buy stuff now is, am I actually trying to do that thing with what I have now? And is it worth investing in the next step up or something else?
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. I keep going back to marketing, but that self-image, not even self-image, but just who am I as a person? And a good friend of mine, mentor, who's been, I know through work, one of his big things is like, you need to market yourself. You need to create a brand. Brand was what you're talking about, not marketing.
Okay.
You need to brand yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And live that brand in all situations, kind of thing. I don't know, just a thought. I find it interesting. I like it.
I mean, it's a good thought. Yeah, no, it's tough, man. Trying to really nail down, what makes you you, and like what the essential you can offer to everyone else
Sure.
in terms of just like being in the world, your relationships, and like I've been thinking recently, like you're a lot of the stuff that we end up doing is kind of meaningless, and what's really important are your relationships.
Yeah.
And both your relationships with other people and your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Is like, am I doing what's best for me? Am I contributing meaningfully to the people that I am surrounding myself with?
Yeah.
Am I doing what's best for me in surrounding myself with certain people? Like,
Yeah.
You really have to look at what your life is, and not just be. I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing video games, but you kind of have to decide, is that something that I want to do a lot?
Yeah.
If it's going to detract from me going out and spending time with people that, I care about,
Exactly.
or finding new people, to surround yourself with that will improve your life and you can improve their lives.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's hard. Finding groups is really hard,
Especially now where everyone's super busy. You kind of have to you kind of have to take a class.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing I'm thinking about a lot about is I never consider myself someone with a large circle,
Mm-hmm.
but I've known a lot of people. Like I've been close to a lot of people now.
Yeah.
Through high school and through the past, let's say 4 or 5 years, and people grow and you change. It's not bad, but you lose people.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing. But there's just different growth. And I think that sometimes you'll grow apart and you're gonna grow at different levels and grow in different ways, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a weird thing to come to terms with.
But I mean, the other thing that I've been thinking about, like to your point, I feel like I've lost people along the way,
Yeah.
and not like we've just grown apart, but like I literally lost them. Like I don't know what, like our relationship just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And it's not like, in a lot of cases, like it's not like we had a super close relationship, but like it could have been something. But it's one of those things where you kind of have to maintain it, or else it's going to disappear. And you have to decide like who, like of the people that I know now, who is it important that I prioritize spending time with in order to avoid losing them.
Yeah.
Because people are busy. They have things they need to do.
It's hard.
And making friends when you get older is difficult as well. Like,
Yeah.
You already have a certain circle, and I don't know. It's not. I mean, I guess it can be easy to make friends, but you have to be the kind of person who makes friends easily.
I think my thing is just meeting new people.
Yeah, no, for sure.
If I kind of found my routine. I have my work friends. Right now I watch trips online. Let's say I was going to trip, I knew certain people there. I knew my work friends. I had certain friends from high school, Boy Scouts, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't meet new people. I have the exact same routine.
Yeah.
I've kind of found where I'm at. And that's, I don't know, it's weird. It's interesting.
It's one of those things where, I kind of, that's one of the things that I miss about working retail, is the people that you meet, because, especially Barnes and Noble, like you meet a bunch of people, which for me are basically like me, they're interested in just nerdy stuff, or they're intellectuals, or they love music, or, all these sorts of things, where it's just people who are generally passionate about things.
Yeah.
A little bit less so, working at JCPenney's, like you meet some people, like mostly the younger people you kind of identify with, but definitely Barnes and Noble, and working in a cafe as well, like, you're just kind of interacting with people constantly.
Yeah.
And, obviously there's like a weird kind of separation there where, like it's a customer service thing where you don't really want to overstep your bounds, but like you can still kind of have like a back and forth, and potentially like that, something could come of that. The weird thing about like for me, I found it difficult to kind of integrate work friends into my like real life, so to speak.
Yeah.
I always felt like there was some sort of separation there, and like I've tried it a couple of different times, and it didn't always like make turn into something, you know.
Yeah. With much of my work friends, I'm pretty lucky in that because I work at a gun store, we're all into the exact same sport.
Mhm.
We can kind of connect through that. And we've hung out, it's been really good. But at the same time, I spend 8 hours a day with these people.
Mhm.
When I go plus retail, when I go home, I don't necessarily want to interact with other people,
Mhm.
much less the exact same people.
Right.
That's not always the case. I definitely enjoy interacting with them, but it's not something that I could consistently do.
Yeah.
It can be like where you and I used to hang out 10 hours plus a week at least. I mean, there were phases where we played like video games for 8, like 4 hours a day a week,
Right.
probably.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. I couldn't do that with my work friends.
Right. Because you see them constantly.
Right. And I'm also a manager, so it's hard to be friends with people you work with. And I hate to use the word subordinates, but if I have to tell somebody off, it's a lot harder when they're your friends.
Right. You know, I'm going to keep bringing up people because I don't have a lot of things that I know, but I know people who know things, or like I'm familiar with people who know things. But Jocko Willink, like a big part of his thing is about leadership,
Yeah.
and how you have to foster relationships with people that are below you in the chain of command, sort of, so to speak. But you can't allow those relationships to undermine your not undermine your authority, but like you have to have a certain amount of distance from it, so you're not playing favorites,
Yep.
and you're not bent out of shape. Like
you need to be able to tell people, like you need to be able to boss people,
right?
And that's really difficult, especially for me in my position because I was one of the lower people. I'm actually in charge of a couple people that used to be in charge of me now,
Mm-hmm.
and that's can be very difficult, especially when I'm the second youngest guy there.
Yeah.
And I'm telling these other people what to do. But if I don't, they're not going to have respect for me as a leader either.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have, I think respect is earned.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really have to grab it. And maybe it's that millennial thing where you try to do everything with kids' gloves,
mm-hmm.
but you don't gain a lot of respect with kids' gloves.
No. I mean, a certain amount of tact, obviously, is like, and sort of, direct orders aren't necessarily the way to go. But, if you have to tell somebody something, like you have to tell them, like, you need to do this, and I need it done, like now. You need to be in a position to do that.
Yeah.
And obviously you're going to have to, like, the best way to do it is to build a relationship with them and be like, kind of set the groundwork and the boundaries and like make sure that everything functions correctly, so that when you do have to be like, I need this done now, they know that it's not about like a power trip or an ego thing. Like you really need it done, and you trust them to do like what you need.
Part of what I've learned is it's a lot harder to almost reteach people something, mm-hmm. as opposed to having it established with them.
Right.
Kind of thing. So the people that started working there after me, it's a lot easier to deal with than the people who were working there before me.
Right.
That I need to change my relationship.
Right. So that's like difficult. Boundaries are easy to set up earlier on, and it's harder to make them like it's harder to adjust boundaries than it is to set them in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Okay. And part of that, I think, is back to going back to branding yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need to brand yourself as someone who can do that.
Right.
Yeah, just finding the priorities of. I'm going to jump onto the branding training again because I think that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How you self-create and what your priorities are. I think with you, it's always been a lot of the intellectual side of things. It's always been, I read this, I've done this, I thought about this a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, growing up, I was seen as the physical guy.
Yeah.
It's kind of, we're homeschooled, so how much of a jock can you be? But I think people's perspective of me was kind of as a jock.
Yeah.
And that was really odd when I found that out. Like, that was a weird thought to
mm-hmm.
me, because it was fine that people thought of me as a guy who worked out. But when I started to see that people thought of me as a guy who worked out, not as a guy who actually had ideas or thoughts and stuff, it was almost hurtful. Like,
yeah,
it was almost that I felt limited to that. You know, I mean, Dolph Lundgren we kind of see as like a stereotypical meathead. He's got the whole accent, he's huge, his whole thing.
Yeah.
He has a master's degree in chemical engineering. Like, he has a higher degree than Bill Nye the Science Guy in bioengineering. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, you can't really. You almost have to, find out what people think of you. And no, that's not right. You can't allow yourself to be limited by your reputation.
Yes.
And you can be a bunch of different things that are contradictory. And I think Joe Rogan's a good example of that, where he is like, he did do kind of martial arts. Like he comes across as kind of a meathead in a lot of scenarios. Like, sure. He looks jacked. He has like full sleeve tattoos or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's also like super interested in science, and like he's like really interested in like actual nutrition. Like, he has nutritionists and like wellness, professionals and like all these sort of people. Like, he's talking to the broadest range of people that, he really encounters. And he's like super thoughtful, but he's also a comedian. So like, he has all these things going.
Yeah.
And to just like put him in the, like, dump him in the category of meathead, like, is super, it's not only inaccurate, it's like kind of demeaning.
It's unfair.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think a lot of times we do allow ourselves, and that's the thing. Like, you can only be pigeonholed into a category if you let yourself be pigeonholed into a category.
That's fair.
And we have to be on the lookout for that, because like, it happens all too easily.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware. I mean, obviously you're never going to be, super good at everything that you possibly could be, but you can be proficient at a broad number of things. And it's worth the effort to familiarize yourself with a wide range of different pursuits in order to become like the fullest version of yourself.
Yeah. And so it isn't just proficiency, I think it's just having an interest.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the first time you do anything, let's say the first time you build a bookshelf, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, let's just face it, it doesn't matter.
Don't be a bad bookshelf.
The first time you try to hammer a nail, doesn't matter how old you are, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
But you have to have that interest, you have to put the time into it. So an interest initially is what's going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you are kind of in a box, let's say fitness, whatever, I'm a physical guy, I'm not really into this other stuff. If I have even an interest and I can have a conversation with somebody else, that's broadening your horizon. That's broadening what your capabilities are.
Mm-hmm. So like,
it's really hard to be a well-rounded individual like that.
So like, if you're even remotely interested in something, like, pursue that. Like, it may not take you anywhere, but at least you made the effort to find out like how far you could go in it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're interested in history, like, pick up a history book, read it, get what you can out of it. And if it doesn't take you any farther, at least you have, like, hey, I read this book. I took some things out of it. I'm not interested in pursuing it further, but at least I know. No regrets about. People have greater regrets about not doing things than they do about doing things generally.
Yeah. Well, how did that quote go? Like, out of the 10 things I regret, out of 10 things I've done, I regret 16 of them. It was like, it's because we regret the things we haven't done.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. One of the best things that I've heard about that's helped me interact with other people is that I can learn something from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And even if some people you meet in retail, it's how to learn not to do this or how not to act or whatever. But, kind of how not to do things too.
Mm-hmm.
But that perspective definitely changes the way you interact with people. And, even if they're not as learned as you or as, into fitness, whatever the case may be, but they're, let's say, a plumber or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and they could, I have no idea about the stuff that they know all about.
Yeah.
I can learn that from them. Even if I've read more books, I've gone to college, blah, 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 it doesn't matter.
Right.
They know stuff that I don't. I can learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to respect that too.
Yeah, definitely one of the, like, it's a concept that I've come across only in the last, year or so, maybe. And it's it's difficult to keep in mind, especially like when you're in person, like when you're by yourself and you're kind of mulling over this concept, like, oh, I should treat people as though they have something to teach me.
Yeah.
But like when you're in the moment, it's difficult to detach and sort of, especially people that you may not like very much. Like that's where it becomes really tricky of like, you're too annoyed, like you're too in your own head about disliking a person that you can't, detach and look at them and be like, no, they are actually good at something.
Yeah.
And it's up to, like, it's my responsibility to find out what that is. Because if I'm not finding out what someone is proficient at and trying to learn from them, I'm doing myself a disservice. And I'm doing them a disservice as well, because, they do have, like, despite how I feel about them, they do have intrinsic value as a human being. And so what they're good at is, like, it's my responsibility to allow them to transfer their knowledge,
It's really easy to be demeaning and to judge people for what they don't know or can't do as well as you.
Mm-hmm.
It's, at least for me, it's always been really hard to respect people for what they can do.
Right.
But I think that, everybody's bad at something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always grew up with the whole, like, everybody's good at something kind of thing. I always hated that because my immediate follow-up thought was, well, everybody's bad at something too. But when I finally heard somebody say everybody's bad at something, that kind of switched it. My next thought is, well, everybody's good at something too.
Yeah.
And that because that was the last thought, that's what I took away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really interesting to me.
It feels like less of a cop-out. It's like everybody's going to have their weaknesses, but, the inverse of that is like becomes more real in that kind of explanation.
And then I'm in that category too.
Right.
Yeah, I'm bad at stuff too. So,
but I forget. It's there's a quote from like a cartoon. I forget exactly what it is, but it's like you have to be bad at, like, being bad at something is the first step to being good at something. Like you have to be bad at something before you can be good at something. Yeah. And so like if being bad at something limits you in trying to do something, you're never going to do anything, essentially. And that's, being a bright kid growing up, I think it hurt me in a lot of ways, not emotionally. That's, that was other things, but, but it hurt me in terms of academics, in that I never felt I needed to study.
Yeah.
If I wasn't good at anything, if I wasn't good at something, I didn't do it.
Yep.
And that's like something that I carry with me and something that I have to, to work against in a way.
Yeah.
And so having like really terrible studying habits affects even, things that I want to do for fun.
Sure.
Because we try to play, RPGs on a regular basis. And one of the major aspects of that is preparation. Like, especially as a dungeon master, preparing is like, 75% of what you do, 50% of what you do.
Right.
And I've always been terrible at preparing because I never learned how to study. And, being able to sit down and make yourself read something that you're interested in, but you're not super jazzed about, like, absorbing the information and like arranging it in a specific way and being able to reference it in your own mind. I should be making flashcards for myself of like, these are characters, these are locations, here's lore attached to the world. Like I should be like totally down to put the effort in to make sure that my players have a good time. But because that I've allowed myself to, become weak, sort of mentally in that regard, like I don't have the emotional fortitude, or I haven't developed the emotional fortitude to study properly. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a
weak point.
Yeah, no, a weak point. Like it's a detriment to me, as a person.
Do you think it's contributed to? Not saying it's you, but do you think that it's affected you being willing to fail or accepting failure?
100%. Yeah.
Because I was thinking that way you're talking about it.
Yeah.
That's just for me anyway.
It's one of those things where like I don't do a lot of things because I'm worried that I'm not going to be good at them.
Right. And if I'm not good at it right off the bat, like competitions or something like that, it's really easy to think that I can be doing something in my head. But as soon as I do it and somebody like trouses me, like, what the heck?
Yeah. That's one of the was I think it was either Joe Rogan or Jocko Willink. They both talk about jujitsu, so it could have been one of those two. But like they talk about jujitsu being like a path to humility and kind of suppressing the ego in a lot of ways, because like when you start, it doesn't matter who it is. It's the person who's been doing it longer than you, whatever that span of time is. They're going to beat you. They're going to beat you a lot. And if you aren't able to absorb those defeats and like learn from your mistakes and put the effort in and be beaten over and over and over and over again and continue to work on that, like you're just not going to go anywhere. And so if you're not able to, like, it's totally an ego thing where you have to be willing to take just like punishing blows to your ego and just like keep it in check. And like having an ego is important because it gives you drive to move forward, but not letting it control you is what allows you to absorb the setbacks.
Yeah. It's really tough to have a balance of confidence in what you can do, because if you don't have confidence in it, like it's the other quote, like if whether or not you think you're going to win or fail, you're right, or whatever, something like that. So having that confidence is the only way. I'm not confident that I can win. Just about guarantee I'm not going to.
Right.
But you need to be able to have, I don't know about like things in place or methods in place, responses, whatever the case may be. You need to be able to accept failure. You need to be able to accept growth. I like the other quote that's, I never lose, I win or I learn. So you can always be improving afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to put yourself out there and do that. That's also where you grow. And some of the hardest points of like, coming home in tears or whatever, like something just devastated me or whatever, something said I did or a response or I got in trouble for something, that's where I grew from, That's the turning points, I guess.
Like you rarely learn anything from your successes.
Yeah.
It's mostly from failure. And we don't often allow ourselves the opportunity to fail.
Right.
Is kind of the issue. And, that's definitely something that I can work on in life is just putting myself out there in any aspect, like if you need to experience failure and rejection, or you're just going to remain stagnant as a human being. Like those are the cards. Them's the breaks. You got to do it. Yeah. I've been thinking about taking a martial art. It's weird that like in my current progression, I'm just kind of following oh, Joe Rogan does this, so I should probably do it. So like between physical fitness and been thinking about doing yoga and taking a martial art and I don't know, going bow hunting, even though I have zero interest in killing things. Like it's this whole thing, but I think taking a martial art would be beneficial to me, but I don't know if I'm making excuses, but I don't feel like I can afford it, and I'm not sure that I want an additional. Like I am having to decide what to prioritize in life, and it is time consuming, and it is costly.
Sure.
Maybe not in terms of like what you gain from it, but like just on paper, it costs money.
Right.
You could probably speak to how. Well, you could probably speak to a number of different aspects of it. Like,
I think that everybody should have some level of martial art because for one thing, just the motor control. It's a lot of learning your body's function, all that kind of stuff. One of the big things that got me into fitness was I remember being a kid when I would watch somebody who wasn't coordinated, maybe they had disease or whatever, they usually ended up being overweight because of it.
Yeah.
And they were struggling to get in and out of the vehicle kind of thing. Like, I never want to be incapable like that. That was always like phobia almost. So that drove me, not that fear should drive you to do this stuff, but that drove me to be fit and into martial arts and that kind of stuff. Being capable was always a big focus. So even if it's not, my martial art was a lot of self-defense stuff, street defense kind of thing. It doesn't need to be like that because you're still going to benefit from whatever it is that you're doing. And expense-wise, it's hard.
Yeah, and the discipline of like learning something physical is going to benefit you in other aspects of your life.
And if you're going to excel in martial arts, it's another one of those things that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So you potentially need to commit time. Like if you're studying 2 times a week, that's like 2 hours a week. That's not actually that much.
Right.
So you need to be dedicating time outside of that to thinking about it, to focusing on it. It needs to be passion. It's a lifestyle. It's not just this is what I'm doing, unless that's all you ever want to get out of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why the expense is hard, like you said. It's not necessarily a small commitment, but I think that it can be beneficial. Absolutely. Right.
Are you taking a martial art now?
I'm not. No. I was doing jiu-jitsu for a little bit. I had one of my bosses is blue belt or brown belt in 10th planet jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
I guess the head of that, he's actually a friend of Rogan's.
Okay. So yeah.
He's in weed or whatever. But
you ever done DMT?
So I was doing that for a little bit, which was very interesting because I had not done a lot of grappling. It was really big into striking. So that was almost, I had a pretty good understanding of it, but it was really like, you're really good at this. You are total noob at this.
Yeah.
Like that was pretty humbling. So I enjoyed that. That was a good test almost to kind of push. But not at the moment. No. I don't see anything I'd recommend. I don't recommend doing it on your own without somebody, at least initially, to instruct.
Yeah.
Because you'll build bad habits.
Right.
And you'll build a lot of muscle imbalances where one side I might be really good with my left leg, I'm really bad with my right leg kind of thing. And you're not going to have somebody to correct you. So I don't recommend doing it on your own. But until you learn at least the initial habits, like the proper motions.
Yeah, the basics.
Exactly. Yeah. Foundations.
Yeah. So if you have if you have opportunities available to you, it's best to get proper training.
Yeah.
Like if you don't, whether it's from lack of financial means or
you don't have the time. Whatever
you don't have the time, it's too far away, like whatever it is, like in that scenario you can improvise more, just like grabbing a bunch of friends and watching some YouTube videos, because like there's tutorials for everything, but like ideally you want someone to like actually train you.
Yeah. And you don't have to, honestly. I like martial arts. I encourage everybody to do it who has an interest in it. But you don't have to. If you're already doing physical fitness stuff, you're gaining a lot of the attributes. You're gaining a lot of the discipline, the body awareness, the body capability, that kind of stuff that you would be gaining from martial arts. It's just a particular activity that I enjoy.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
No, I feel pretty good.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. And everyone, have a nice day.
Have a good one. See you.